long day.
What's that?
Tired, long day.
Yeah.
Summer was good.
And other
Spent
issues
camping and kayaking.
whether it's
Oh, yeah?
walking on the sidewalk or winter time. Just try to have that more regular.
Illinois, here in Michigan.
Okay.
That's where we went this year.
Been in Madison area for, coming up on 9 years. And
I'm just the iPhone.
So are we.
Yeah.
Well, I never thought I would camp in Illinois, but I actually did this year. It was really nice.
State Park?
Yeah, Rockford State Park. It's like an hour drive from where I live, and it's 3,000 plus acres. Just north of Rockford. Between Rockford and Salt Lake.
Ready, Dan? All right, thank you.
I do say the ones that I need.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jennifer Way, and I want to welcome you to our listening session tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come and listen and to share your feedback tonight with us. This is a chance, the main purpose of this is to share a little bit of information with you and then mostly give you a chance to share your feedback with us. We do have library board and village board members here to listen tonight. You'll see them around the table. They will listen to your feedback. They won't be responding tonight or discussing any of your comments, but they will take them into advisement as our process moves forward. Those who can't join us tonight will be able to watch your comments and hear what you have to say, either if you submit those in writing or by watching the OCA media recording. And we appreciate OCA being here tonight to record this session for those who couldn't make it. First, I want to start with some introductions of just the folks who will be speaking tonight. So I am Jennifer Way, I'm the library director. I'm going to let each of our speakers introduce themselves.
I'm Elise Cruz. I work for the village. I'm the director of planning and the zoning administrator.
My name is Jeff Rao. I'm the Director of Public Works.
I'm Jenny Nelson. I'm the library board president.
I'm Brett Rottinghouse, an architect with OPN Architects.
And so I just want to give you the idea of what to expect tonight. So we're going to start with a short presentation to talk about the background on the library project, where the project is now, and then we're going to review all the different sites that have been suggested or reviewed for the new library location over the past month or so. We will, if you have questions, you have a form that you should have gotten when you came in. If you didn't get one, you can see our staff member Laura over in the corner, and she can give you one of those forms. If you have questions about the presentation, we just ask that you write those down. We'll take some time tonight to try to respond to as many of those as we can. If we can't get through all of them tonight, we'll make sure that any that we don't respond to tonight will get responded to at our next session on Saturday, and we'll send you the link to that so you can hear the answers. We do want to save at least 45 minutes at the end for your comments so that we can hear from you. So I just kind of want you to know what to expect. We will leave a short break between the presentation and then the questions and answers, so you have time to write your questions or turn in your form to request a turn to speak. There are also baked goods out in the lobby if you'd like to take a treat on your way out or during the break time. That's the important part. I'm sorry, I forgot that. If you have questions or comments tonight, there's a form that you can complete. We ask that you complete that. If you have a question to ask tonight, we'll take the questions from the forms. If you'd like to request a turn to speak during a comment period, we just ask you write your name down and we'll call you up for a turn later on. Or if you have comments to share in writing and don't like to speak in front of folks, you can write your comments on the form. If you prefer to, we also have an online form, and if that's something that you prefer, we have a little handout with that web address that you can use, make your online comments that you can grab from our staff person on the way out. When we do public comment, we will ask people to kind of focus their comments just to 3 minutes a person, just to make sure everybody here has a turn. And again, if you have extra comments, there will be that online form that you can share more comments that way. So without ado, we're going to get started. I'm going to have Jenny Nelson talk a little bit about the background on the new library project.
Hi, welcome everyone. As Jennifer said, my name's Jenny Nelson. Just for a little reference about me, I live at 127 West Grove Street, so If you know the village, you know that's kind of where the Main Street Library was going to be built, would be in my backyard. So something that I care a lot about. I've been on the library board for about 4 years, and I've been the president for 3 years. I've also been the co-chair of the fundraising committee, and I'm on the building committee. And I'm telling you this so you kind of understand how important the library is to me and how much we care, and we want to make sure that the library is what it is best for the community, because that's what we've been trying to do and that's what we're working towards. A little bit about the community input and visioning that you see up on the screen there. In early 2019, the library board and staff worked with the community, and we held 35 plus hours of listening sessions. We spoke to over 30 people from many different community groups, from senior citizens to kids to just about every kind of group you could find in Oregon. It was done to understand the needs and the vision of the Oregon community for the new library. The vision included a children's space separate from the adult reading area that we have now. It included a place that kids could be a little bit loud, explore some books, and meet new friends. A space for young adults to be able to be separate from younger kids to pick out books or just hang out. Quiet places to sit and get lost in a book for adults, for anybody who wants to just be in a space. There was more requested from the library though than just books. The library staff asked for a space to be able to spread out to work instead of having 6 people in one office like they do now. They asked for adequate storage for all the materials that they need for all the community outreach and everyday programming that they provide for all of us. We were asked to provide computer and internet access and much needed spaces to gather that don't exist currently in Oregon. People wanted spaces for teens to be able to go and have after school study breaks or attend programming. People wanted spaces of different sizes to hold meetings, from Girl Scouts that I know my daughter can't have right now, or to board meetings that we can't have right now. A maker space where programming can be held, allowing librarians and community members to teach anything imaginable. And finally, a large meeting room that doesn't exist, a space that we can have a huge community listening session, a place to meet. We heard the theme many times of wanting a third space, not just a library, but a community gathering location. And hearing this vision, we were able to come up with a preliminary design that laid out all of these requests. It took the shape of a 33,000 square foot building, and ideally a 4-acre lot that would allow green space, adequate parking, water retention, and the possibility of expansion if we needed it. The last few years, I've learned a lot from the designers and the library staff about creating efficient layouts for a library. There are a lot of pieces that interconnect that I would have never guessed. I was taught that libraries work best when there are 2 floors or less. This allows the staff to be connected to each other and visible to help all the patrons that come visit the library. The more floors there are, the more staff is required, and unfortunately, the more it costs to operate the library. I also learned the importance of having a book drop enter right into the staff workspace. It allows for less transport of the books and provides a quieter experience for the general public. I also realized the importance of having easy access from the parking lot to the building for patrons with mobility issues or parents wrangling small children. These are only a few examples specific to the layout of the library. There's so many other things that piece together to make the space come to life. I want you all to know we're not trying to build the biggest or fanciest library. We're trying to create the best library for Oregon. To help with the building size and perspective, Jennifer's going to talk about some of the libraries in some of the surrounding communities.
So like Jenny was talking about, we're trying to be really thoughtful with the space that we're creating and trying to make sure that it meets the needs both now and into the future. So these are some of our Dane County neighbors, and it shows the populations. You can kind of compare to Oregon. This isn't the census data, but it's the Department of Administration population estimates, and then the library size. So you can see DeForest, which is very close to our population, their library is about 33,000 square feet, which is exactly what we're aiming towards, and their library was built in 2002. So they've been enjoying that space for about 20 years. They've been serving their community from that space. You can see from the circulation numbers too that even though our building size is a little bit smaller, we are a very busy library and our community loves library services. Circulation is just one measure of people's use of the library. We have things like programming, reference questions, meeting room uses, things like that all kind of are different ways that people use the library that aren't shown here just because of space. But we did kind of want to show that we are trying to really build a library that meets our needs, but what we're asking for isn't going to be the biggest or fanciest. It's just we want it to be thoughtful and just meet our community's needs into the future. I'm going to turn it back to Jenny, and she's going to talk a little bit about the timeline for our project so far.
So this is kind of hard to see, but I'm going to kind of walk through it a little bit. The timeline, I think, kind of helps explain how we got to where we are today, so we thought it would be worth going through that. Starting in 2009, we actually have library board meeting notes about discussions with the village of the library needing a significant addition to the library. For reference, that's only 14 years after it opened, and I've heard stories about the library being too small the day that it opened, and that we probably shouldn't do that again. So that was in 2009. Moving on in history to late 2016, the village decided to purchase the 249 North Main Street site for a municipal building use. And then in August of 2017, it was decided to designate the Main Street site for the new library, following recommendations by planning consultants for the village. However, this approval was conditional and required that a memorandum of understanding between the village and library board be created before it became official. The MOU was done because the relationship between the library and the village is a little different than other municipal groups, like the Park Commission, for example. And this is something I didn't learn until I was on the library board. The funding and the operations of the library board are actually very separate of the village. We get most of our funding is from the village, but it also comes from Dane County and from other resources. But once that money goes to the library board can spend it kind of in any way that they wanted to. Obviously, we're very respectful of the community. We want to make sure we're doing the best, but it's a different relationship. And that's why this memorandum of understanding had to be completed, so that we could create this contract between the boards to define the roles of the different boards and create specific steps and milestones in the process. And we've been working really well with the village, I think, with the MOU to understand and to be able to be thoughtful and get through the process. So development of that MOU was started in August of 2017, shortly after the North Main Street site was selected, but it wasn't completed until October of 2018. And it allowed the library to proceed to the first exciting step of hiring the architect. That's where I got to meet Brett. In February of 2019, OPN was hired, and through the listening sessions described earlier, created a space plan and a conceptual design for us for the Main Street site. The conceptual rendering and the space plan that I'm sure you've all seen were used for fundraising purposes for the next 2 years. The MOU agreement stated that architectural and engineering work could not proceed until the funds necessary to build the estimated cost of constructing that design were raised, which meant during the fundraising for 2 years, no additional site work, design, or engineering was performed. We focused on raising money to build the library and how best to support the community during the pandemic. In February of 2021, so we're getting closer, an amazing community-wide fundraising effort of $2 million was presented to the village board. I can't thank everybody enough for contributing to that and for working so hard with us, because we wouldn't be here today without that money. With that $2 million presented to the village board, they upped their support from the initial $6 million to $10 million, giving us a $12 million budget to build a library. But with this increased funding came the mission of creating a sustainable building to support the needs of the community for now and the future, and an understanding that there was not going to be additional money given by the village for the project. We had to stay within our budget and build the best library possible. So with the estimated money funding procured, the MOU allowed us the next step of formal design to proceed. The library board hired an owner's rep to assist with the design and construction process in July, and then the architects and engineers started with the preliminary civil engineering site layout and design while their contract was being finalized. And during that design, so late August, early September, the issues of poor soils, site grading, tree removal, and some of the other concerns that have been presented on previously came into sharper focus for us. While some challenges were anticipated, it was only through this formal recent civil engineering work that sufficient information became available to fully understand the cumulative impacts on the new library project. These challenges would result in a library different than our community envisioned. Please understand, the North Main Street site is still viable to be built on, and in fact, it's possible that it might stay there. But there's a $600,000 premium spent on the site to make it functional. If we do that, it's money not being spent on the building itself. It means things like geothermal or solar, or things that make the building more efficient long-term are probably being removed, or there's a reduction of scope or in the building or furnishings to meet the budget. This would be true of any site that we have to purchase property or remediate soils or do anything above and beyond to build on. So after presenting the issues we were facing, the guidance from both boards was to pause and look at potential other options that could better meet the needs of the library, desires of the community, and best use the set budget of $12 million for the library project. With this guidance, the design team has been meeting with village staff to review sites that would be a possibility for locating the library. They've looked at sites suggested by community members, board members, and proposed some of their own. And to go through the sites, I'd like to introduce Elise Cruz, the Oregon Director of Village Planning and Zoning.
Thanks, Jenny. So, as she just mentioned, we wanted to just highlight the site again that we've been talking about for the last several years. The boundaries, some of the opportunities, again, why that site was selected in the first place, proximity to downtown, elementary schools. A lot of the legwork has already been done to get started on design for this site, but those challenges, again, caused us to pause, take a step back, and make sure this is the right direction that we want to collectively be heading as a village. I will be briefly running through these dozen or so sites that have been suggested. The ones that have asterisks are ones that have been suggested by community or board members. Other sites have been brought up by some of the staff or design team. One point I just want to clarify before I dive into this, I think there's been a little bit of confusion in the community about what facilities we're discussing here tonight. So at this point, we're just analyzing potential sites for the library. We're not discussing senior center, post office, any other public facility moving at this time. The senior center at this point, the plan has always been that they would like to remain on their current block, so the Brook Street, Spring Street, Waterman Street area near where they are right now. So that's still the plan moving forward. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. We were just discussing possible sites for the library. So I'll just be going through these first, the village-owned sites and then the privately owned sites, just to kind of give everybody a point of reference. A lot of these sites you may not be familiar with, and they're called different things. I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. So again, the first one is that North Main Street site we just covered, owned by the village, about 2.7 acres. The current Brook Street site, the area that's shown here highlighted is village-owned land or village-owned right-of-way. The Waterman Street block there is shown. This accumulation of land is about 2.6 acres in our central business zoning district. Another area that's been suggested is Kaiser Park. This is about 5.8 acres, also owned by the village and currently zoned as our park uses and actively used as a park. JC Park West, this is 28.3 acres, also shown as park space, actively used. There's a plan to redevelop this park, construction to be started next year for athletic fields, pickleball courts, playground space, a lot of very needed drainage work and investment here in our community for active recreation and opportunity to really draw a lot of people in for tournaments and have adequate facilities to serve those events and all those people. Another site that's been suggested is Bethel Green Acre Park. This is over off of Burr Oak, just north of RCI Intermediate School. This is about a 6.6 acre amalgam of parcels shown here in red. The neighborhood park there. 153 Alpine Parkway lot. For those that don't know, Village Hall will be moving next spring, summer. We purchased the former One Community Bank building here on the corner of Alpine and CC. It's a sort of kitty corner from Keller Alpine Meadows Park. The bank owned both of these lots, so we purchased both. Village Hall will just be using the building, the parking lot, and the plan right now is to just leave that empty for some future use. Right now that's shown as planned business zoning. It's about 1.7 acres in size. Another site that's been suggested is the former school district site off Alpine Parkway. This is adjacent to the Keller Alpine Meadows Park. It's right at the end of Oregon Parks Avenue near where the townhomes are. So the site we've been looking at potentially is about a 4-acre site. Current Village Hall site has also been suggested for redevelopment, again with the Village Hall uses moving out to Alpine Parkway within the next couple of months. This is about a 1.2 acre site, this very oddly shaped parcel here, again in our central business zoning district. This covers Triangle Park, the downtown parking lot, the alley that goes behind all the businesses, as well as the Village Hall building. Another site that's been suggested is the John Blanchard Dog Park on Park Street. This is a 13.3 acre site, again designated as a park space, and has some critical environmental features and water issues on this site, which has it designated an environmental corridor as well. The fire station has been suggested as a site, 131 Spring Street. This is actually part of two different parcels, but this area shown in red is 0.5 acres. The police station has also been suggested. This area shown, which kind of overlaps with the youth center parking lot, which is sort of a shared use parking lot there. This is about a 1.4 acre site. So moving over to privately owned sites that have been suggested, we have the former Ticey Building, 281 West Netherwood Street. This is a 2.9 acre triangular parcel. This building was actually purchased in the summertime, I believe, by JT Engineering. So they'll be relocating their headquarters from Madison to Oregon. We're very excited about that. There's also going to be a robotics company, Icon Robotics, which is based in New Zealand. They're going to be starting their U.S. operations and having some staff and equipment in the rear of this building. So this building is now purchased and occupied. I think they're doing some renovations, so we're happy to see that building being used. Another site that's been suggested is the Elise family site. If anyone's familiar with Mary Jo Elise, she worked for the village for a very long time, and Jim Elise, her son. This is the kind of remnant of the family farm. There's actually two parcels here, but together that's 4 acres. The current zoning is single-family residential. There was just a comprehensive plan amendment done for this parcel in the summertime, which now shows planned mixed use. So a mix of institutional sort of public uses as well as potential for housing and commercial on this corner, right. This is Walgreens. This is the Catholic Church. So right on the corner of Netherwood, going east-west here, and North Main Street. The 56ers soccer building, 155 Braun Road. So here's Braun, here's Market Street, and here is North Main Street. This parcel is 2.8 acres, owned by the 56ers Soccer Club. This is in our general industrial area, so right here at the north end of the village. What's been lovingly referred to as the Dan Burtler Site, or the former Great Dane site. Currently no planned use that's been shared with the village at this time. This is a 1.8 acre site. Again, this is right across the street from the new Village Hall on the corner of Alpine and CC. A planned business is sort of what's envisioned for that lot. The Faith Lutheran site has been suggested. This is a 0.8 acre parcel right off of Elm Street in the historic neighborhoods off of South Main. It's again shown as an institutional use, which covers museums, churches, libraries, village halls, senior centers, all those public type uses. Lakestone, if anyone is familiar with, you've probably seen the construction going down, end of Wolf Street across from that quick trip off Janesville Street. The buildings are going up pretty quickly. They did designate a 2.7 acre site for future commercial use, which does not have a user designated at this time. This is the Park Street new stoplight down here, Wolf Street right here, so nearby the middle school. This site here is about 2.7 acres. The Seville Building is this is about kitty corner from the 56ers building, so Market Street, Braun, here's the railroad tracks and the trail. This is a 6.7 acre site. This building is currently being occupied by several different businesses, and there's a plan to do some development on the west side of that parcel. Nothing's been submitted formally at this time. And those are the sites.
So the the next steps in our process are we're going to hold 2 more listening sessions. One's going to have a presentation like tonight, and then the other will just be a listening session for community members to attend by Zoom so they can share their comments like folks tonight. The community feedback, both the videos of these sessions and any written comments that are submitted either by our online form or that are emailed to village board members will be shared with both the village board and the library board, and will be reviewed by the library board, and then the village board as well. So the goal is for both groups to work together to try to find the best solution for our community, but ultimately the decision really does lie with the village board. So we want to work together as much as possible to work through this challenge and make sure we're choosing the best site for the community. So we're going to take just a few minute break now. So if you have a question or want to sign up for a turn to speak, we ask that you take your form and fill it out. Our staff members will be walking through to help collect those, or if you want to just put it in the green basket. You can also step out to the restrooms. We'll start again in 5 minutes, and we'll start by addressing those questions that you've written down. We'll get through as many as we can tonight. Once we get halfway through the session, we will switch over to comments just to make sure all of you get a chance to speak tonight. And again, any comment or any questions that we don't address tonight, we will reach out to you about and make sure those are addressed in the next session on next Saturday. Go ahead, take a break. We'll come back. We'll come back at 7 o'clock, and then we'll start with questions at that time.
And then we took care of signage.
All right, we'd like to get started again if everybody could take their seats.
But then I still get to.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'd like to get started again just to make sure we can get through as many questions as possible for you tonight. So we did have a request that the audience would like the other folks at the table to introduce themselves. So we will ask the rest of the village board members and library board members who could attend tonight to introduce themselves. Amanda, could we start with you?
Absolutely. My name is Amanda Peterson. I'm a village board member. I have been since 2018. Yeah. And I'm on the library building committee also. So I've been following this process very closely.
I'm Mike Wunsch. I was elected to the village board last spring.
I'm Luke Stitch. I've been on the board for a year now, I guess.
Oh, Randy Glish, I'm village president. I've been on the board, I think, since 18 or 19. Village president since April.
Derek Belo, just recently elected last spring.
Kyle Severson, I'm one of the library trustees. I've been on the board for just over 5 years.
I'm Carrie Shuda. I've been on the library board since, I think 2008. I've been on the board the longest. I've been there since they started talking about a new library.
I'm Laura Steda, also a library trustee, and I've been on the board for about 3 years now.
All right, so I'm going to just take question by question. The person that is presenting that has the most expertise will respond to that. We may have more than one person respond to some of the questions. So the first one is, if a site that has an existing building on it, will the library have to occupy the existing building? And I think that will depend on the site and the existing building and how suited it is for the library's needs. Does anybody have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it would just, as Jennifer said, it would depend on the existing structure of a building. A library has a lot of structural needs just from the weight of books and everything. So that would be one of the things that would have to be evaluated early on from a structural standpoint, whether that building could actually physically take the load of it. So.
The next question is, what is the intention for the North Main Street site if it doesn't become a library? And at this point, because it is still, according to that MOU agreement, that memorandum of understanding with the village, it is still designated as the site for the library, and it may be. If it is not chosen for the library, that decision would be up to the village board to decide what the future of that property would be. So the next question is, the $12 million building cost estimate is at least 2 years old. How feasible is that the library, as conceptualized, can be built for that? That's a really good question because the longer time goes on, especially with the pandemic, the building costs are really a lot different than they were 2 years ago. But again, as Jenny said, we kind of have the budget we have, and so our goal is to make the best choices we can to get as close to that size footprint as we can. But there might be some factors that are a little bit beyond our control that we'll have to kind of deal with. I don't know if, Brett, you want to talk to construction costs at all?
Right. This is not unique to just this project. Every project eventually has a set budget that we have to work to. And it's part of our job, the building committee's job, to design a building that fits within that and try to accomplish as much off of that checklist as we can with that set amount of dollars. Part of that is bringing options and making the right decisions as we move forward that's best for the community.
So the next question is, can the library footprint be downsized to fit on the Main Street site? So it can be of course it could be downsized. We'd prefer not to downsize the building size. So we do have storm requirements, the building size, parking, green space, there's setbacks and things, grading. So there's a lot of factors that kind of all work together on the site. So you could downsize any one of those elements if you chose, depending on what you choose to prioritize. There is zoning code that has requirements about parking. There are some flexibilities to that. Technically, it all fits, would fit right now, but it's really not pretty. So it's really close to the edges of the property lines. Some of the layout can't be ideal. Some of the storm management can't be ideal. Do you want to add to that, Brett, at all?
Yeah, it's not just the building size, it's also how the site flows, because it's not just a square site that then we can push things around. It's more of an L shape. And so the building could fit. We've shown that it does fit, but with the high side towards Main Street there, and then accessing back towards the north, there's quite a bit of grade work that has to be done on the site as well. And then the stormwater management, which Jennifer already mentioned. So it's not just the building size. Yes, we can make the building fit. It's all the other pieces that have to come into play with that start to affect how desirable the site is.
Is there any quite a bit of grading to be done?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, the site is very sloped and also kind of a unique shape. So there's a lot of grading that needs to be done at that particular property, which is part of the challenge as well. The next question is, can downtown sites support a multi-story building with the marshland base? Do you want to take this one, Jeff, or do you want me to try it?
Yeah. I think everybody accepts that there are portions of the village of Oregon that are very poor soils. Anywhere as you start to get down near the creek, we have very, very high, what we call organic soils, a lot of peat moss. If anyone has been in the dog park, it is kind of just basically black, very organic soils. So those are very challenging. Anything can be built on. I mean, they build on sandbars and all that kind of stuff all over the place. So it just does increase your costs of how you construct. The example I would give is when the youth center was constructed, they had to, Brett, you were on that one, I think, weren't you? Mm-hmm. That had to be over excavated by almost, I think, 6 feet, complete excavation of the soil and then brought back with fill. So it can be built on. If a multi-story downtown building or a building in a very poor soil area might have to be put on driven piles, very large, deep piles that are put into the ground, and then that gives you the foundation and the support you need. But obviously, piles are more expensive. When you can go with a traditional spread footer foundation, it's much more economical.
Thank you, Jeff. The next question is the building footprint solid, or will it be modified to the site picked? So that's something that if a different site is chosen, we'd keep as much of the floor plan as we could, but it's likely that it would need to be modified because of the unique shape of that Main Street lot and the kind of the L shape where we were trying to welcome people both from Main Street and from that parking lot off of Johnson Street. It really kind of was specifically targeted and designed to fit that location. So it's likely that in a different place we would have to modify the plans, at least some capacity, the shape. We do kind of have things split into what makes sense in terms of floors with, the adult areas and children's areas and busy areas and quiet areas. So we kind of want to keep those adjacencies and those functional spaces together. And so we'd likely keep the divide between what goes on what floor, but we'd, need to tweak the shape of the building and maybe where things are to fit the site if it was a different shape than what we have now.
Which I think we would want to do anyway, just to be as responsible or responsive to the new site as much as possible.
So the next question is, has a traffic study been completed? And the person did reference Alpine Parkway. So we did do a traffic study on the North Main Street site. We were trying to do a number of things to be proactive to some of the challenges that we were aware of in terms of traffic study, a stormwater preliminary analysis there. That we tried to do. There has been no traffic study on Alpine, if that's what the person was interested in. What other sites have been looked at, we did cover that during the presentation. So anytime either we're constantly looking for sites as we drive around town or as community members suggest them, we do try to look at all the sites very seriously and really think about it. Why this park? So as you can see, a lot of parks have been suggested as solutions. The Alpine, the park, I'm guessing they mean the park by Alpine. So that was a property the village just recently reacquired in 2020 and had 11 acres that they were planning on developing in some capacity. And so that's why it was being considered as a solution for the library property. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that piece of it. I think I got all the pieces of that question. So the next question, which of the occupied sites are available for purchase? So we did want to include all of the sites that were recommended to us. Elise, are you able to comment on which ones are actively for sale?
So of the privately owned sites, the only ones that would actively be for sale would be the Dan Burtler site, 102 Alpine Parkway, and the Prairie Brook site. They're not currently marketing that, but that is available for future development. Obviously, if a site is either occupied or not, and that's the direction that the village board directs us to go, at that point we get into the nuts and bolts in terms of would the owner be willing to sell? What would the purchase price look like? All those details.
So the next question is, which of the sites owned by the village have future plans for moving what is currently located there, like the fire station? So we did mention 2 village buildings, the fire station and the police department, which were recommended to us. At this time, to my knowledge, neither of those buildings have plans to relocate. And they don't have any funding in the upcoming CIP, which is the capital improvement plan for those buildings. The senior center is planning on expanding in the next 5 years, so that building is planning on expanding. Did I miss anything with that?
No.
I would just mention that I think maybe what some people are thinking about the fire department is they've talked about in the future as their service area expands and more development happens, that there might be a need for a satellite location, but at this time I don't think there's been any discussion about the current adjacent site here on Spring Street to move at all.
So the next question is, how can we look at any of these locations before we even know if they are viable? That's a great question. So we had been focusing on 3 sites that we kind of felt were the most suitable in terms of size, cost, just a variety of factors, availability. We had presented those choices, which was the North Main Street location, the current library site on Brook Street, and the Alpine Parkway former school site. We presented those to the library board at their meeting this past month. We did hear feedback that that it felt like we'd already decided where we wanted to go, so we wanted to take a step back to make sure we were being really open-minded. And so that's why you kind of heard all the different sites that had been suggested, to make sure that we're considering all options available. And so that's kind of why we broadened the focus tonight, just to hear any feedback you have on something that was shared tonight, or if there's interest in a particular property, we would maybe focus on that one more, or the village board might ask, to look deeper into that particular option. Does anybody else have anything to add to that one? How do you decide how big of a library the village needs? So OPN Architects helped us with that needs assessment process, so I'm going to let Brett answer that question.
Yeah, so we do it from a variety of different ways. One, we try to evaluate communities of your size, not only in Wisconsin, but in this region, to understand what an appropriate target is. So that's one way that we look at it. Another is by holding the community outreach sessions, which you commented earlier on the number that we had. We had a significant number of outreach programs or meetings with various interested parties throughout the community. And through those listening sessions, we heard about needs and wants that needed to be incorporated into the building. From our experience, then we're able to rely on that, as well as some other, what other communities are utilizing to help us with the size. Then there's also the collection size. So we're able to take a look at what Jennifer and her team currently have available to the community. Sorry, yeah, the collection is the books. And everything, the services that the library offers. Most people think of the books, right? So there's not only that, there's the computers, the meeting spaces, all of these things go into it. But the collection mostly is focused on the books. So the size of that, the circulation of that, can that be weeded down at all, or does it need to expand? All of that then goes into how much space you actually need for your collection. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that we go at it from a lot of different ways to make sure that we're being appropriate in the way that we're laying things out and the size of everything.
So the next question is, how many positive emails have you gotten regarding the Alpine site? And I apologize, I can't answer specific numbers tonight because I don't have those written comments in front of me. But we will compile all emails and comment forms, and those will be shared with the village board. So they will have all the emails to kind of weigh in all the different feedback that people are sharing. Why show location options that are too small or already purchased? That's a good question. So we were asked to make sure we were just showing all things that were suggested. So we have heard kind of trends of the same thing being suggested by multiple people that maybe didn't realize something had been sold, like the Seville Building, for example. And we wanted to make sure that those were being considered. And then also some people will say that anything's for sale for a price. So, we want to make sure that those are included. If there was a really perfect site that could be considered. We're really trying to do our due diligence with that. But again, there are, the sites that are larger are definitely, closer to 4 acres are more suitable for, not just our current needs, but also the future needs. So that's something we want to keep in mind. Could we build a smaller site than the 4 acres we talked about? It's technically possible, but, that might mean that we don't have room for future expansion or something like that. So we wanted to make sure we showed that range of sizes and sites that were being suggested for feedback from the community. So this question is, can current parts of the library that are too small, like meeting areas, be moved to the new Village Hall building and remodel the current library building? So the current library building, to get to the square footage we would need, would really require a bigger footprint, both on 1 story and 2 stories. The current library building has a lot of residential components to it, and the soils below can't currently support a second story, and it's not built structurally to support a second story. So it's probably more cost effective and in the best interest just to demolish it and start over on that site. And again, just to get the right footprint for what we've identified as the need, we would want to start from scratch on that location, which would require looking at some of those other buildings on that village-owned property, the post office or the senior center, to see how those pieces fit together. And then the last one was, how can you plan for the library without planning for other buildings? Jeff or Elise, do you guys want to talk about kind of the village? I mean, I guess as a library board, we're mainly focused with, we kind of had a plan for the library, and we're kind of trying to pivot and continue the movement. We have funding available. We have $2 million in privately donated funds from our community. We want to move forward and make it happen. Obviously, there are moving pieces. The senior center is kind of the other village building right now that's most urgently looking for other space, and so that is, directly impact if we do use the current site, would directly impact the senior center and would be part of the conversation, I'm sure, is how that fit together. Do you guys have anything to add?
I would say that, I mean, we are continually evaluating all of our facilities all the time, and looking at how those can be improved. I think for a long time, and this is a situation that the village is kind of in right now, is, we've talked a lot about this, is we have some very out-of-date buildings, and under an ideal world, we would have been probably building a library 15 years ago. Then we might have been working on the senior center, and then maybe 5 or 10 years after that, be doing a village hall. And, for one reason or another, either recessions or other priorities in the village, that's just not been done. And so, we've been working, actually, I've been with the village for over 6 years, and literally from day one, we've been working on our long-term capital plans, both with Mike Grace as our former administrator, and now Martin Shanks as our current administrator, in how do we make these happen? How do we cause these buildings to be upgraded? Because if you ever want a tour, I'll give you a tour of the village hall or any of the facilities. We are in need of upgrades. So we're always looking at how those come together. When we were approached by one community bank about purchasing the bank building, that was not even on our radar until October, November last year, when they approached us and said, would you ever consider purchasing this for a village hall? So that was something that kind of fell into our laps, and we had a tremendous deal to be able to do that and be able to move the village hall out there. It wasn't on our plans to do village hall. I mean, our plans were to library first. So what I found in village government and municipal government like this is you have a plan, and then you have to work towards that plan and towards that end. And it doesn't always go in the right path or that you think it will. But I will assure you that we are constantly evaluating everything, including our condition of our roads, our condition of our buildings, our conditions of our water system, our wastewater system. That's a constant thing that we are doing all the time.
Thank you, Jeff. I think we addressed all your questions. If we missed a question, it wasn't intentional, so I apologize if we did miss it. Let me know, and we'll make sure that is covered if we did miss a question of yours. Mary Norwell, I'm going to have you come up first for the public comment, because I did want to clarify your question and make sure we addressed yours.
Because you want me to go first. Get me out of your way.
Oh, not at all. I saw your question was a copy of the library in various communities. Did you just want a copy of that slide? Was that your question?
That would be great.
Okay.
In fact, a
Yep.
copy of that whole presentation would be perfect.
Yep, I can post the copy of the presentation to the library website tomorrow.
That would be great.
And if anybody is interested in specifically having it emailed to them, if you let one of the ladies, Alicia or Laura, over at the table know on your way out, then we can email that directly to you as well. Okay, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, thank you for taking time to listen to me. I don't have prepared notes. I think everybody sitting up there knows that I would like to see the library in the center of town. And as I've said before, I think that's important to keep a vibrant downtown. I write the timeline for the Oregon Observer, and I was looking through old observers the other day. And I found one from like the 80s that said, "Where's Oregon going? We've got a great increase in population, and are we just going to be a bedroom community, or are we going to be a village community?" And here we are 40 years later, basically asking the same question. Do we want to be Fitchburg South, where we have no center, we just have a bunch of subdivisions that all go to Madison? I didn't move to Oregon for that. I don't think anybody did. So I would like to see our downtown stay vibrant. I have a Planning the Public Library from the American Planning Association. This is an old study, I will admit that, but they seem to use the same feedback or the same comments in many studies coming forward. And I'd just like to read just a few things here. The location of a library is a major factor in its use. Placing library where the land for buildings and for parking was inexpensive. Okay, the practice was to place libraries where the land for building and for parking was inexpensive and readily available. As a result, many libraries are not easily accessible and are underused. In general, most library authorities agree that libraries should be centrally located in or near commercial areas and shopping centers in order to promote library use. In this old study, Atlanta, for example, the Williams branch in the heart of a commercial area has a circulation of 100,000 books a year. The Kirkwood branch, located in the more traditional site opposite a park away from the center of activity, circulates only 38,000 books per year. And I could go on, but the point is, we need to have the library down here. You come down, you get a book, you go sit at the Kickback Cafe or the Firefly, or you meet your friends downtown. We don't want to be Fitchburg South. We want to have a village. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Jesse Cook, do you want to come up next?
Hello. I'm going to agree with the previous speaker that I feel that the library needs to stay downtown to maintain a center of town, because it seems like everything is moving to the outskirts of town. I also still feel that the Alpine site is being unfairly pushed on the village. I feel that of the 15 or so sites that were presented, clearly only 3 are even possible. The one that we've already discluded on Main Street, or not discluded, but shown it's going to be a huge problem to build on. The current site, which then would require the city to also look at where the senior center is going to move to. All these other things that I think should also be planned at the same time, because how can you put the library there without knowing where the senior center is going to go? How can you move the senior center without knowing where the post office is going to go? How can you move this future fire station? Where is that going to, possibly go? If you don't have that all planned out, how can you move one building? Then you're running into problems with all the rest. I just don't understand how that can even happen. So then, to me, I feel like it just leaves the Alpine site, which is, kind of the only option, which is, I think, a terrible option. I also was the one who asked how many positive emails you've received on the Alpine site, because of all the comments I've read on Facebook posts, of all the neighbors I've spoken to, I haven't met a single person that thinks that would be a good site for any building. So I just want to make sure that that's kind of known, that I don't know who supports that site other than the board, but the majority of the village I don't think does it all. So.
Thank you, Jesse.
Jesse Cook.
Hey, Jennifer. Can you just say the person's whole name when you call them
Oh,
up?
sure.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. The next person will be Amy Furkey.
Hi, my name is Amy Furkey, and I do want to thank the library board, the library staff, and everyone else who is here tonight and who has been working so hard on this plan. I do know that you put a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of hope into this project. And it's important, though, that you get the input from the community. So I applaud you for taking a step back and having these sessions and having so many so that people can really express how they feel. Libraries are so important because they are essential places to our community. They provide information, access to technology, and also access to new and diverse ideas and perspectives. Really, libraries are about community. What's essential for a library is for it to be safe, to be accessible, and to be welcoming to all people. They are created, these elements are really created, though, through community. They're created through the culture that the institution has established, and also the warm and kind and engaged staff. I know that Oregon already has this in its library. This has been a wonderful community. I moved here 7 years ago, and I have been so pleased that we made this move. And part of that is that library. That library is such a special place, and I applaud you for the staff and the welcoming. I've never met anyone at the library who wasn't kind and warm. But we need to make sure that we look at this plan very carefully because the library is such an important place in our community. We have to be mindful especially about where and how this library is built. I agree with all the comments that have been said so far that the library should be considered to be a central part in our downtown. It needs to be a place where people can get to it easily. It needs to be a place that's walkable. It needs to be a place where people can come together. But this also brings me to a broader concern which others have expressed, and that is that we need to have a vision for our community. What do we want our community to look like? Do we want it to be just a bunch of housing developments? Also to look at the economic and business factors. By having the library close to other businesses, it allows for that interaction. I remember being growing up in a library that was right next door to a bakery. It combined my best things about childhood, eating donuts and reading books. That's what I would like to see. I would like to have that for my children too. I love being able to go check out a book, drop by Firefly, drop off my mail. It is so convenient and it helps me to engage in all of the places downtown. I think we also need to be more creative and mindful about how we are developing these businesses and these developments. Oregon is a small place. We don't have a lot of land. We need to be very planful about how we put things on the spaces. Not to be piecemeal, not to be just plopping in a convenient space, but that we have a long-term vision and plan of where things will be. Do we know how many businesses we need? Do we have essential services? How many fast food restaurants do we need? How big of a library do we need? Where are our values? I also believe that we do need to make sure that we look at the social factors. Do we want to keep major institutions and services all nearby so that someone can access them from a very central point? Also to make things walkable, to make sure that we have spaces for people to be able to get to the essential services and not necessarily have to rely on cars. I think we also want to think creatively. How can we combine developments together? Can we have multi-use buildings? Why, I know you're not talking about the senior center, but why can't we have the senior center and the library together? I know I'm probably over my time, so I'll be short, but just please, I would like us to be more creative, more planful in how we are developing this library. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. The next person on the stack is Ray Vogler.
Well, I too would like to applaud you for these event today and the next two that will be happening. I think it's very important you're getting the community input and that you're finding out what we are looking for as a vision and that there's so much work that you put into it. I know that people have been doing this for years, so I thank you for your commitment. And I live at 299 North Main Street, have been one of the people that has helped to raise funds for the library, so I'm very, very passionate about the library. I use libraries, I love them. As our kids were growing up, we were constantly going to libraries. And so they're very important to me and very much a part of our family and our community. I happen to live in the neighborhood where the library was going to be put originally, and now that we're kind of thinking, well, is that the right option? So this is a new concept for all of us. And what I wanted to do was kind of take it back to the basics. And I think the basics here are that a person was hired by the library board, and this person is the business owner's representative, and his job was to look at the library site and determine, is this going the right direction? And he did a really excellent job in a short time of letting us know that there were some major concerns on the site. So I just wanted to go over a few of those and talk us through and figure out, well, where does that take us? So the business owner explained that all the trees on the lot would have to be removed. So he didn't say just one, but he said all the trees would need to be removed. He also said that trees in the surrounding neighbor yards would be removed. So that's a big concern for the neighborhood. And the thought was, and I did, watch him speak, he was saying that if you look at the canopy of a tree, then you see the root structure. So the root structure is as big, and even though it's on your property line, it might be going off into where the library would be built. So that's a big issue. He also said there would be no green space left. And I know this is something we all envisioned, that we wanted to be a beautiful library with trees and grass and teaching gardens and an outdoor area that comes in. And that was a big part of the visioning sessions. He also said, and this is something a lot of us didn't know, even though we attended a number of meetings, that the library back window would be looking out on a retaining wall. So in essence, he was saying that when visitors come to the library, they would be looking out, pavement on one end, pavement on the other end, pavement on another, and then a retaining wall on the fourth. And that is not at all what we had envisioned. So I think what we need to do is then kind of come back around and say, what do we know about this? So we know that cutting down those trees in the middle of a block will affect water runoff issues. It'll exacerbate flooding, and this will impact not just the hill on that land, but a very established neighborhood. And this neighborhood has been here for, over 100 years. We're talking homes that go back to the 1800s, early 1900s. So it's a very well-established neighborhood. And then some other things that he brought up was the fact that we would have that site prep costs. So we're talking $600,000 just to get the site somewhat acceptable. But he said really, to be realistic, that the lot would never be the right lot for the library. We wouldn't be able to expand, we wouldn't be able to build for the future, and that I know, having attended a lot of those building committee meetings, which were very fascinating, was that we always want to be thinking to the future, the 21st century. So, with regret for a lot of us, because we have been involved in this for so long, I support what he said. He's the expert. He gave the information in a very, judicial way. He had no opinions, it was all facts. So I think what we should do is not have the library at 249 North Main Street. I think it will circumvent our vision, what we're trying to accomplish now, into the future, and for future generations. And whatever site we do choose, I think it needs to be one where we can accomplish all those goals. So thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you for your dedication.
Thank you, Ray. The next person we'd like to invite to speak is Joanne Russell.
Can I pass for right now?
Sure.
I'm really trying to understand all of the things that are going on.
Sure.
I see a lot of things that I don't like, what has been happening. It's almost like we have no plan. And I mean, you guys are all planning, but it's almost like you don't know what you want for growth for the community. And I think you have to have that first. So we just put that police station down on Oak Street. Now we're talking about moving it.
No?
Why?
It was
So
the
we're
site
just, we were just trying to, just want to clarify that point is we included all suggestions that we received because we wanted to be transparent about what ideas were coming forth. So that's not, we're not trying to push any particular idea. We just wanted to make sure that we were representing all the suggestions that were coming our way.
But
So.
anyway, I need to get some longevity on some of these people. Buildings that we want to move, and how long have they been there, and what service have they done? And then have each of you come up with, here's what we want for Oregon.
So then on the next person I'll invite forward is Chris Sager. I apologize if I said your name wrong.
Hello. My husband and I moved here about 7 years ago, and we have really enjoyed the community feeling of Oregon. We lived in Madison, McFarland, Windsor, and now here. We especially like being able to walk places and to bike places. We enjoy the downtown area. That being said, I think when you're thinking about the library, the most important thing is access and location. It's more important than how the building looks or the green space around it or the parking spaces. I think it's important that people who want to use the library, who need to use the library, can get there. And the downtown location, I think, is particularly good for the populations who need it, who may not have the resources to be able to drive wherever they want to go. So I'm talking about the school-age children who can walk there after school. I'm talking about the seniors, because many of the 55 and older communities are downtown or in walking distance. And I'm talking about the low-income housing, especially the new developments that are going on down by Janesville Street. And so I think for the vitality and the identity of our community and for serving our citizens, the downtown location is what you should really be looking at.
Thank you so much. Steve Johnston, would you like to come forward?
Hi, my name is Steve Johnston. I've lived in Oregon for 28 years. I've been a quasi-vocal opponent to a $10 million library. I don't think we need a building of that size. I base that on some of the comments you made regarding meeting space, about having an auditorium, about having meeting space. We spent $54 million on schools. Are you aware that every meeting room in our public schools is available to the public? I mean, come on, we don't need more meeting space. We have it. Absent COVID, absent the hours of school operation, if you want an auditorium, you can get it. So don't tell me you need an auditorium. I echo the sentiments of many of the people that came before me on putting the library downtown. As was just said, if you move it, it eliminates Pleasant or Prairie View and NKE and the senior center and all these people walking to the library. If you move it to Alpine Parkway, they can't walk there. So I'd like it downtown. So if you accept the idea that maybe we can reduce the size of the library, maybe we can put it on the church site, which was the original site intended, and everybody's worried about expansion. I haven't been to a library in 25 years. I'm not worried about expansion. You know, I think if you build what you need today, you may not need expansion. And I could be all wrong. You guys have put a lot of effort into this thing, starting in 2008, I heard from Carrie. So I understand the investment that you've made into this effort and how you have ownership of it. But we went from a $10 million library that was supposed to be $6 million to the village and $4 million in donation to $10 million to the village and $2 million in donation. And I've talked to Jeff and I've talked to Randy about how about fixing some of our streets? I mean, take $4 million bucks out of that and fix South Main Street at Sterling, fix State Street, fix some of the streets that we have in our village that suck. And the answer is, well, we got the money, don't worry about it. And then I read in the Oregon Observer, my taxes are going up. Well, guess what? You can't pay for all of this. So I would encourage you, keep it downtown, look at meeting space, because the Oregon school system has meeting space, and it's available. Okay? That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Casey Horniman? Oh, she's coming forward.
Hi, I am Casey Herneman. I've lived in Oregon for about 10 years. Thank you for holding these listening sessions. I'm glad you're seeking the additional community input. I would like to speak specifically to the former school site at the Keller Alpine area. I'm opposed to the new library at that space for many reasons. However, I would like to focus on how it would impact the experience of the park as a natural space. Many residents value or Keller Alpine Meadows because it gives them a place within the village to connect with nature. Adding a civic space would impede these activities and reduce the amount of wildlife due to a loss of habitat and more human activity in the area. The library would increase traffic and noise. It will also decrease safety for path users if the continuous loop becomes one that has an entrance to about 100 space parking lot that needs to be crossed. It was noted in a previous library board presentation that the proposed site on the map is at the highest point of the park. If you look at the overall elevation of the site that you have listed, over half of it is actually much lower in elevation. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to visit and walk the perimeter of that site. You get a bit messy, what with the prairie seeds that stick to your clothes and the mud to your boots, but I feel it's worth it. The elevation change from the road to the interior of that site is definitely visible. Any building, especially a 33,000 square foot building, placed on the highest part would be visible from all points of Keller Alpine Meadows and the surrounding park areas and will dominate the landscape. Going back to the walking path, in a survey of results that I presented in a previous village board meeting, about 99% of the people who responded would like to see that path be maintained and continuous. If the path is rerouted to maintain continuity, it would likely need to be on the park side of the building and at a lower elevation. This would be closer to the wetland or lowland part of the greater park area. If the elevation were to be left alone, there might be ADA accessibility issues for people with limited mobility, increased flooding, and of course impact to the wildlife habitat. If grading of that portion of the site were to happen to raise the path, it would also take away from habitat. There was reference to the Waunakee Library in the previous library board presentation, showing how it is an example of what a library could look like at Keller Alpine Meadows. The Waunakee site was previously industrial with challenges of land reclamation due to toxic contamination. All of the development at that site to make it a library space was beneficial both ecologically and civically. Building at CAM would be taking something that is a unique natural space within our community for institutional use. In the same survey as noted before, when asked what type of development people would like to see at Keller Alpine Meadows, over half of them said to enhance the natural space or just leave it alone. I, along with these people, would like to see the Keller Alpine Meadows space preserved as a natural area within the village and as a place that's valuable to people and wildlife alike. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't sure, Diana Hutchinson, did you want to speak or not tonight? You okay? Carol Cushing, did you want to speak or not tonight? I'm fine. Okay. Teresa Nelson?
Hi, I'm Teresa Nelson. I live at 245 Drumlin Circle, and I represent the Oregon Nature Alliance. And tonight, I'd like to speak in regards to the proposed library site at the Keller Alpine Meadows Park area. And I'm going to talk about the environmental impacts that building a library there would have. Out of all the sites under consideration, building at this location would have the greatest environmental impacts because this particular site is just upstream of one of the most endangered ecosystems in the world, a wetland. Wetlands are among the most productive ecosystems in the world, comparable to rainforests and coral reefs. They are biodiversity hotspots, yet we continue to lose more and more of them every year. In fact, we've lost over 50% of the wetlands in Dane County, and looking at historic wetland maps, the Oregon area has lost at least 60 to 70%. Many of that remain are degraded. We continue to lose wetlands, though they provide so many benefits. Here are a few facts from the US EPA. More than 1/3 of the United States threatened and endangered species live only in wetlands. For many animals and plants such as wood ducks, muskrat, cattails, and swamp rose, wetlands are the only place they can live. Many of the US breeding bird populations, including ducks, woodpeckers, hawks, and many songbirds, feed, nest, and raise their young in wetlands. Wetlands store carbon within their plant communities and soil instead of releasing it to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Thus, wetlands help to moderate global climate conditions. Wetlands provide many benefits to us that no other ecosystem can. These include natural water quality improvement, flood protection, opportunities for recreation and aesthetic appreciation, and more, at no cost to us. The functions of a wetland and the values of these functions to humans depend on a complex set of relationships between the wetland and the other ecosystems in the watershed. This means that protecting wetlands means more than just protecting the wet land. If we want to preserve the value wetlands provide, we need to preserve the wetland community, which includes the areas that drain to the wetlands. The proposed library site at Keller Alpine Meadows is upstream and drains directly to one of the last remaining wetlands in Oregon. Any development in this area will negatively impact the wetlands and all the habitat and benefits they provide. Merely avoiding construction within a wetland boundary does not equate to protecting it. We are at a crossroads now in the village to decide if we will continue the trend of wetland loss and degradation, or we take bold action to protect and restore the little we have left. I'll leave you with a short summary from the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission's Dane County Wetlands Resource Management Guide. It states, wetlands are among the most complex and least understood of natural community types. Most wetlands also serve multiple functions. One of the greatest threats to wetlands has been the incremental and piecemeal destruction, often described as death by 1,000 cuts. Efforts are needed at the local level to protect and restore and enhance the wetlands that remain, preserving the many benefits which they provide. Please do not build the library in the Keller Alpine Meadows Park area. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Corey Cook, would you like to come up next?
Hi, Corey Cook here. I've just been taking some notes as this meeting's been going on. I'm a little bit angry and a lot confused. I agree with most of what everyone, actually all of what everyone has said so far. I guess one of the comments that was made earlier was that there's no design that could be done on the original site that was proposed until fundraising was done. But what about feasibility study? I mean, when this site just first popped up 4 years ago or whatever, I think there was a lot of public pushback saying that this was a horrible site. nobody listened to that. People had personal agendas they wanted to get pushed through. But I think anybody with a little bit of common sense could walk that site in about 10 minutes and rattled off half a dozen things why it probably wasn't a good location. And then you showed a slide comparing to other libraries, but you're just showing Dane County. What about the other surrounding communities? Evansville, Edgerton, there's a lot of communities in Rock County that are about the same size too. So I don't feel like we're getting a real gauge of what other communities are doing there. I also feel that it's narrow-minded, only discussing the library. One of the comments made today, we're only going to discuss the library today. As others said, what about the senior center? Other services. I don't think you can look at this as just one building, one service. What are we going to do? I think you have to have a holistic plan. And then I was a little bit confused why we were showing all these locations. I think you've tried to hit that a little bit. But to me personally, it feels like you're leading us down the path. You're showing us all these locations that won't work because you have a site specifically in mind that you think will. So I agree that the one on Alpine is not a good location. I fear whatever, if anything ever gets built there, library or anything else, it's going to have a negative impact on the wetlands there. I don't know if you guys ever walked down there, but one of the coolest things, if you walk through night, you'll see deer staring at you. And, I don't know if that'll continue. And then I agree that everything needs to be downtown. The library needs to be downtown. Right smack in the center of the senior center, the schools, post office. I think other people have made good points about that. So I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Susan Shadavi.
Hi, Susan Shadavi, 1860 County Road, MM. Well, the library is really one of the most important buildings in a community. And it really needs to be treated as such, and there needs to be really great thought put into this process. We need a library that's large enough and that contains all the required spaces for the services we want. And it needs to be attractive and inspirational. It needs to fit into the landscape, not sit up on a hill like a sore thumb. It needs to be built to serve future generations. The site downtown on Main Street is showing not to be able to provide those qualities. And I can understand people wanting something downtown. And if there's a viable space downtown, I could support that. The Main Street lot is not that space. I disagree with some of the people that have said nobody wants the library at Keller Alpine Park, because there are many people, including myself, that think it would be a wonderful spot. I'm a great believer in natural environments. I've taken the Master Naturalist classes that are provided in the county. I have a prairie in my own property, a rain garden. About 2/3 of my property is all native, and I believe in that, and I believe in preserving wetlands. But also, I was a teacher, and I believe in the educational quality of the property that we have at Alpine Keller Parkway. I think I've been told that when you combine the 4 parks, Lerner Park, Keller Alpine, the other 2 parks, I don't remember the names, when you combine them, if I'm not mistaken, I think I was told that it's over 200 acres. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty close.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was told it's over 200 acres.
190.
190, yeah.
I'm a long-term time member of Rotary Club, and Rotary has been restoring the prairie at Lerner Park for many years, and I've worked on that prairie. It seems to me that we can use this area for great community service. We can have a beautiful library. It needs to be a library that fits the land, not something just plopped there. But it could be a great educational opportunity. And if those parks are combined, it's a large acreage. And if we use technological services, we should be able to preserve that wetland and enhance it with a facility that the community will love, and it'll be a destination site. People will be drawn to that site. I myself, I drive all the way to Verona because I love the look of that library. And you look out and you see the prairie. It's beautiful. It's inspirational. And I think we can have something inspirational in Oregon. And my fear is that if the library does not get put there, what will be put there? Will it be the auxiliary fire department? Now, if the village is willing to sign some paperwork and promise that that land will never be developed, I could go with that. But I doubt that the village would do that because I'm fearing that something will be built on that property, and what will it be? And if something's going to be built on that property, I can't imagine anything more wonderful than a library. But it has to be built correctly. It has to preserve the natural environment. But as I say, it can be a destination. And we've been hearing people talk about, you want a library that's walkable. That space is walked constantly. People are walking there all the time. You have a church there, and you have a food pantry there, and you have houses there, middle-income houses. It's not the center of Oregon, but it is a center of Oregon. We aren't maybe going to have only one center of Oregon.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay.
Joanne, did you want to have a turn after all, or not?
No, I'll wait for another.
Okay. Was there anybody who would like a turn that hasn't had a chance to speak yet? Okay. Well, thank you so much for everyone taking the time to come tonight. Again, we do appreciate your time. If you did do your comments in writing, those will be shared. If you'd like a handout with the link to the online form for yourself or someone else you know, feel free to get one on your way out. You can also take a form if you want to write more comments after you've heard other people speak tonight, and leave that before you leave. Thank you again so much for coming.